Millionaire challenges homeless black woman to fly his plane. Her response shocked everyone. The plane sat on the runway, gleaming under the midday sun. A millionaire, known for his sharp business acumen and lavish lifestyle, had just made a challenge that no one saw coming. Standing before him was a woman, ragged in appearance, homeless by circumstance, but with a fire in her eyes that matched the billionaire's ambition. "Fly my plane," he said with a mocking smirk. But what happened next left everyone speechless, demonstrating that courage, talent, and resilience can emerge from places people least expect. This is a story that'll make you rethink how we judge others. Stay tuned. The woman, named Tasha, had spent the last few years surviving on the streets of downtown, the weight of societal judgment heavy on her shoulders. Every day was a battle, one to find shelter, another to find hope in the midst of hardship. She had once dreamed of becoming a pilot. Her passion for aviation ignited in her childhood, but dreams had little place in a world that constantly overlooked her. People saw her as nothing more than a statistic, another homeless person with no future. The millionaire, Greg, was used to controlling everything around him. His private jet, his lavish mansion, and his expensive cars were all symbols of his success. Yet his wealth seemed to have disconnected him from the humanity of those around him. One afternoon, during a charity event at his private hangar, he made a bold and brash statement. "I wonder if any of these people have what it takes to fly a plane. Maybe you over there," he pointed at Tasha, "can show me if you're truly as smart as you think you are." Tasha, taken aback, felt the sting of his words. But there was something deep inside her that refused to let him see her weakness. She stood tall despite her ragged appearance, determined not to back down. The crowd watched curiously, unsure whether to laugh or cheer. But Tasha knew that this challenge wasn't just about flying a plane. It was about reclaiming her dignity in front of a world that had constantly rejected her. As the crowd murmured in disbelief, Tasha stepped forward, her heart pounding. She had flown before in her mind. Every sleepless night spent looking at the stars, dreaming of flying. She had studied aviation in the only way she could, through books and online resources, absorbing knowledge when no one was watching. But could she really prove herself in front of this crowd? Would they believe her? Would Greg believe her? Greg, for all his confidence, didn't expect Tasha to say anything but no. People experiencing homelessness weren't meant to challenge billionaires. They weren't meant to have the same skills or intelligence. But Tasha wasn't just anyone, and she refused to let his assumptions define her. "I'll fly your plane," she said calmly, looking Greg in the eye. The tension was palpable as they approached the jet, the sleek machine that seemed to mock her reality. Tasha had never been in a plane this big before, let alone flown one. But the aircraft was more than just metal and wings to her. It was a symbol of freedom, of breaking the chains of limitation that the world had placed on her. The crowd gathered, waiting in eager anticipation. Some were skeptical, others curious, but none could predict what was about to unfold. Inside the cockpit, she began to go through the motions. She flicked switches, adjusted the controls, each movement precise, guided by the years of study and the years of dreaming. The engines roared to life, and Tasha could feel the weight of the plane's power beneath her. Her fingers danced over the buttons and levers, a familiar rhythm that felt like home. Greg stood by her side, trying to hide his disbelief. "You know what you're doing?" he asked, a hint of condescension in his voice. Tasha didn't respond verbally. Instead, she just looked at him with a small, knowing smile, her confidence building with each passing second. She had always known what she was capable of. It wasn't the world's job to believe in her, but it was her job to prove them wrong. As the jet took off, the crowd watched in awe. They had expected a mistake, a failure, something they could laugh off. But instead, Tasha flew the plane with such precision that even Greg began to respect her. The winds were strong, the skies vast, but Tasha was unfazed. She had flown in her mind for years. Now, the world would finally see what she was made of. As the plane soared higher, the view from the cockpit was breathtaking. For the first time in years, Tasha felt like she was above it all, literally and figuratively. But just as she was beginning to settle into the comfort of flying, an emergency light blinked on, a mechanical failure. The engines sputtered. Tasha's heart raced, but she didn't panic. This was where the real test began. Greg, visibly rattled for the first time, glanced at her. "What's going on? What do you need me to do?" he asked, his tone suddenly losing its earlier arrogance. But Tasha was in control. "Just let me think," she said, her mind racing through the procedures she had memorized. She spoke calmly to the crew over the intercom, issuing commands with the poise of a seasoned pilot. The failure wasn't catastrophic yet, but it was a reminder that in the skies, control was everything. The crowd below had no idea what was happening, but Greg felt the weight of the situation. He had underestimated her. Tasha's hands moved with the grace of someone who had fought her entire life, not just for survival, but for respect. The malfunction was fixed, the plane stabilized, and Tasha guided it back to the ground with the skill of a veteran. The jet touched down smoothly, and the hangar erupted into stunned silence. Greg stood there, dumbfounded, as Tasha shut down the engines with a steady hand. The crowd had no words, their preconceived notions shattered in an instant. Tasha had proven them wrong. As the plane came to a halt, Greg stepped forward, his expression now one of genuine admiration. "You did it," he said, his voice softer than before. But Tasha, now back on solid ground, didn't let his words sway her. She had nothing to prove anymore. The world had already seen who she was. Tasha didn't need validation from anyone. She had lived through enough to know her worth. As she stepped out of the plane, the crowd's attitude began to shift. The whispers that had once been filled with skepticism were now replaced with a new kind of respect. People who had once seen her as invisible now saw her for what she truly was, a force of nature, a woman who had risen from nothing, who had defied the odds. Greg, standing next to her, was no longer the arrogant millionaire. His perception of success had changed. He had seen Tasha for the first time, not as a homeless woman, but as a human being with limitless potential. "I never would have guessed," he said quietly, almost to himself. Tasha turned to face him, the soft breeze ruffling her hair, her gaze steady. "You never asked," she replied. In that moment, Greg realized that true greatness wasn't about money or privilege. It was about resilience, determination, and the willingness to challenge the world's expectations. Tasha had shown him and everyone watching that anyone, no matter their background or circumstances, could break free from society's narrow definitions of success. As Tasha walked away, she left behind a powerful message. The world might judge you by your circumstances, but it's your actions that define you. No one has the right to determine your potential, not even you. This was more than a challenge. It was a statement. And the world had been watching. What will you do when the world tells you no?